In the last episode of my History Unscripted series, we visited the notorious site of the Andersonville Prison, and we got a very small glimpse into what life may have been like for the prisoners that were kept here. Now, Andersonville Prison was opened in 1864 and was open for about 14 months before the Civil War ended. And during that time, nearly 45,000 Union prisoners of war were kept on the grounds behind me here. And of those 45,000 prisoners, nearly 13,000 would never leave this place. And they're buried just up the road here. So we're going to visit the cemetery here today, pay our respects, and see if we can learn a little bit more into the notorious site of the Civil War Andersonville Prison. So we've made our way into the main entrance to the cemetery here, and if you've ever been to any cemetery, really, it doesn't have to be a military one, you can just see the difference in the headstone placement. Now, up front here and on this side here, these are the Union burial trenches, and you can just see how close the gravestones here are to each other. And that was because there were so many dying that they were literally just digging these long trenches and then putting the bodies, no caskets, into these trenches. And most of these soldiers were buried practically naked because clothes were in such dire need. Gosh, I mean, just row after row. There were times in this prison where over 100 prisoners were dying a day. So you can just imagine these trenches were just being filled as fast as they can dig them. All these soldiers here before us were buried without caskets. Now, originally, instead of the headstones, the prisoners were being marked with wooden stakes, and they were numbered. And luckily for the fallen soldiers here, a prisoner by the name of Dorence Atwater was assigned to keep official records of the prisoners. And remarkably, especially during the Civil War, only about 400 soldiers here remain unidentified. Now, if you've ever been to a cemetery with Civil War dead within its grounds, you'd notice a very large number of unknown soldiers. Well, surprisingly, here at Andersonville, a vast majority of the prisoners are identified. It is absolutely remarkable that they were able to keep records of these fallen soldiers. But like we did state, almost 400 remain unidentified. And again, Dorence Atwater and a name you may have heard before, Clara Barton, they were able to keep records and then compare records and identify a vast majority of the fallen here. So we're in section K of the cemetery here, and I wanted to point this one out. This is Adam Swarner of Company H of the 2nd Regiment of the New York Cavalry. And this is the first soldier. I'm not sure if it was the first soldier to die here at Andersonville, but this was the first soldier to be buried here at Andersonville. And you can kind of see the number on top of the gravestones here. You see number 2. There's 3, 4, and so on. So section K is where the burials start for the Andersonville dead. So I really enjoy when places use older historic photos and you can kind of compare what things look like today and what they look like at the time in the 1860s. So this is Andersonville today, 2022. You see row after row of markers. Well, here was Andersonville in 1867, and someone photographed this cemetery from this exact spot. So you can kind of see the comparison here, which is always neat to see. Really all that's changed per this sign is the graves in this picture from 1867. These were all wooden markers, and today they are stone. And just to show you how little it has changed, 5752 looks like something fish of the 12th New York, maybe. And here is 5752 Fred K. Fish of New York. So the headstones look pretty similar. There's a few subtle differences in the headstones, but there's also some subtle differences in the information provided. Most of them have at least the soldier's last name and state of origin. Like these are Connecticut, Vermont, New York. This soldier here, John Lucas, he was in Company C of the 89th Ohio Infantry. And some even have the rank, like James McDivitt was a private from Pennsylvania. And you have Jacob Struley, who was a private from New York. E. McLaughlin was in the United States Navy. So it's pretty interesting just to kind of see the origins of some of these soldiers here. Now 45,000 prisoners would be kept here at Andersonville over its 14-month span. And of those 14,000, nearly 13,000 lay amongst these burial trenches here. Now that's a death rate of almost 29%, which is a staggering number. But there's also a common misconception that the guards here at Andersonville suffered a similar death rate, which isn't the case at all. At the time, there was about 2,400 to 2,500 guards in and around Andersonville, and of those guards, estimates range between 200 to 250 guards perished while guarding the Union prisoners here at Andersonville. Now that's a death rate of 10%, so you can honestly tell that the rates of 10 and 29% are nowhere even close to each other. Now, last episode, we also touched on a group called the Andersonville Raiders and how a large group of them were rounded up and tried and punished. Well, 6 of them were hung at the prison of Andersonville, and those 6 lie here. Now, you can kind of see they're separate from the rest of the soldiers who died here at Andersonville, and that's because the soldiers deemed them not worthy of laying amongst their fallen comrades because of their transgressions towards their fellow soldiers. And you can kind of see the message that this sent and still sends today. These prisoners will lay amongst each other, separate from their fellow soldiers for eternity. Now, this grave before us, it says W.N. Collins. Now that stands for William Mosby Collins. And he was a private in Company D of the 88th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. And he was known as Mosby here in the prison camp. And he was the infamous Andersonville Raiders leader. Now, I wish I had the time to find information and to share stories of all these gravestones here. Obviously, that's something I can't do. You know, it's really important to remember the sacrifices of not just the Andersonville dead, but of all these gravestones here. But there is one gravestone that I do want to share with you today. So this is the gravestone of James Wiley. Now we're in section H, and this is headstone 12607. And this gravestone looks a little different because this is a Medal of Honor recipient. And First Sergeant James Wiley of Company B of the 59th New York Infantry, he'd be awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on July 3rd of 1863 in a little place known as Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And his citation reads, he captured a flag of a Georgia regiment while under fire. So this is First Sergeant James Wiley. and you can see Andersonville spared no man. Here's a sergeant who fought in one of the deadliest battles in American history, and Andersonville claimed his life. So we started at the first grave of the first soldier buried here at Andersonville, and this group here, these are some of the last soldiers to be buried here at Andersonville. And this one here is J&O King of New York. If you ever decide to visit Andersonville, make sure you set some time aside to visit the cemetery here. And in all honesty, even if you never come to Andersonville, there are military cemeteries scattered throughout our country. If you have some spare time, pay one a visit. It's really important that we don't forget the sacrifices of all these brave souls behind us. Even if the graves are unknown, their names may be unknown to history, but we don't have to forget their sacrifice. And it's always a good reminder coming to places like this, just to remind myself how lucky I am, not only to be alive, but just to live in the great nation of the United States. It's not perfect, but even knowing that, these men and women gave their lives without hesitation, and that's something worth remembering. So with that being said, we'll catch you on the next site.